Hey everyone, welcome to the Not a Lonely Coffee Break podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Megan. We're a podcast about coffee and work, but make it queer. Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but I am entering that season of my year where I am like done.
Yeah.
I am ready for a break.
Samesies. Like, I need to go into hibernation. I talked about it last time. It's time to just unplug, I think.
It is. I feel like also, I don't know if this is possible, but I feel like this year was really long, but also really short at the same time.
Yeah, I think a lot of the environmental things going on, I don't know if it's called that environmental, political, whatever craziness
Mhm.
made it very long. But I think
Maybe
we
that's
stayed
what it
pretty
is. Yeah.
busy. It's
Yeah,
been a
yeah,
busy
yeah.
year. It's been good for networking and all our cool events and all that. So yeah, I think we've been staying busy. But I am done
Mhm.
with 2025. I don't
I
like
know.
that we're going into 2026, but I am ready. I'm ready
Mhm.
to just go. Yeah.
Same, same. Also, though, I was talking to someone recently and I felt really old. I had taken my dog to the vet
Mhm.
and she's old. She's in her senior years.
Yeah, the
And
baby.
so the vet tech was like talking to me or whatever and saw like the date, like her birthday or whatever, and was like, "Oh, such and such. That's the year that I was a freshman in high school." And
Oh.
I looked at her and I was like, "Hmm, thanks for calling me old without calling me old." And she was like, "What?" And I said, "I got this dog when I graduated college with my undergraduate. So there's that." And she laughed and was like, "Oh my God."
I know. Yeah. They are catching up to us. It's
I
like,
know.
I don't even remember what it was, but I think it was like if you're watching Home Alone now, like if we watch Home Alone today, it's between 1991, I guess, when it released and now. It's the same way of watching a movie in 1991 that was released in like 1955.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like,
Also,
ew.
Also, I feel like now watching some of those movies that, like, as a kid, we were totally teen kids, and now that we watch it with, like, our adult perspective, we're like, "What on earth was this child thinking?"
Absolutely. Like, I know we don't like Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling. I don't. But I've seen Harry Potter again as an adult, and I'm like, this little piece of little nugget, you chicken nugget. I don't know if that, the
No, I mean, obviously, yes, author aside, but, like, it is one of those things where, like, you still enjoy it, but yes, you're kind of like, "Okay, who was okay with, like, the fate of the whole magical world resting on the back of this child that is kind of a brat and disrespectful?"
Yes, he's like extremely disrespectful, and he just makes assumptions the entire time. And he's like, "Oh, so Snape's got to be the bad guy because
Yeah,
he's Slytherin." Like, whoa, we should
he
not be
looked
making
at
assumptions.
he looked at me wrong.
Like, yeah, I
Uh,
definitely am getting to that point in my life where I just have
mhm.
a different perspective
Yeah,
on movies. Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
It shatters my reality.
So that's a fun topic that maybe we can explore later. But I wanted to give an update to our listeners. I mentioned this last time, but in case anyone wasn't paying attention, Megan and I, because we need a break, this episode is actually going to be the last serious episode of the season. And then we're going to go on a brief hiatus and then we'll come back refreshed for season 2 after the holidays. So sometime in January, we will be back with a fresh season, a fresh outlook on work and queerness. But today, since this is kind of our last serious talk, serious coffee chat of the season, we thought it would be a good idea for us to kind of circle back on, the big reason what that motivated and prompted Megan and I to even start this show, which I know some of you might be like, it feels weird that you guys are just now breaking for season 1 when you've been doing this for so long already. But I don't know, we felt like we needed a little pause, and so this gives us a great opportunity to come back refreshed. But
Also,
anyway,
we might be workaholics, but
we might be, yes,
do as we
yes.
say, not as we do.
But so I thought today, Megan, we could circle back and talk about just creating inclusive spaces in the workplace. And, when we first started this show way back when, things looked a little bit different
Yeah,
than they do now.
for sure.
And so I thought maybe it would be good to circle back on some of those things, and approach it from maybe the individual standpoint. Like, what can we as individuals
Yeah. Because when we first started the show, it was like there was a lot of push for
do? Mhm.
corporate responsibility part of it, of
Mhm.
making spaces inclusive, making sure employees felt safe, making sure there were policies put in place to protect the LGBTQ people. And like we've seen a full flip of
Mhm.
basically turncoats and these people
Yeah,
who have said
right.
that they are respectful of the community and that they want us to be
Mhm.
included, and they respect our ideas and perspectives, and now they've taken a full turn and
Yeah.
saying, "Actually, we could care less. We could care less.
Mhm.
We're gonna pull out of your community resources, and we're gonna, take these policies out from
Mhm.
political or socio-economic pressure." But, how quickly that was done within, what, 5 years?
Mhm.
Really changed my perspective and also wanted me to like think in a different light. Okay, if how do we put the pressure back on them? Or
Yeah.
how what is my part in this to make sure that our people are protected, and
Mhm.
my coworker next to me, wherever journey they might be on, that they can just work and feel free to work without being discriminated.
Mhm.
And so, um, yeah, it's just like,
No,
okay,
it's
what does that even look like?
yeah, I think it's just so important too, because even before all of these big changes that have happened, where we are seeing companies essentially say, "We care, but not enough to fight for protections for you." Like, basically essentially saying, like, "You're not good for our brand right now, so we're gonna basically just say whatever." But I also think I was seeing this, like, yeah, so I was seeing this before, even where, like, individuals, people were essentially, like, looking for workplaces who already had that structure built in. So it was like that corporate responsibility piece. And it's like, yes, it's their job to create the inclusive space. That way I can just feel comfortable right away. And I do think that, yes, that's valuable, and having that absolutely is going to be a catalyst for everything, but I also think that we as employees, we as people have a part to play in this. Because the other thing to know about, like, anything when it comes to diversity, inclusion, everyone's story is different. So, like, even if there is a company that feels like they're inclusive, it may not necessarily be inclusive for you as an individual, and that might mean that you have to have some individual responsibility in advocating for those inclusivity adjustments, right? So, I think it's a really great thing to talk about is like, what are we still waiting for, right? Are we just waiting for this big shift again where everyone
Mhm.
says, Never mind, we were lying, DEI is a good thing and we want it back."
Mhm.
Or are we gonna jump in and say, "You know what? I'm tired of waiting, and I'm gonna be the catalyst."
Yeah, like we keep waiting for like this big fix, right? Like
Mhm.
we're waiting for HR to do a training or to make an announcement to set new policies, and but it's like what can we do day to day? What does that
Right.
look like?
Mhm. No, yeah, I agree, and I do, coming from someone who does do a lot of trainings in workplaces, one of the big things that I know I bring up in my trainings isn't necessarily about, like, "Here's another training," right? You gotta take care of yourself, so you have to practice some of that self-awareness to see where you are in everything, and how you fit into everything that we're talking about before you can start empowering those other people around you, because if
Mhm.
you aren't practicing self-awareness, it's not gonna do anything. So, right, how are you treating people, right? Are you treating people inclusively? Because I think people do remember how they're treated, whether it's positive or negative, but people do tend to hold on to the negative interactions they have a little bit more
Mhm.
than they do with those positive ones.
Right.
But when it is a really good interaction, they do hang on to that, and they don't necessarily focus on the how necessarily the brand behaves, because they remember those interactions that they have with the people.
Mhm.
And so I think self-awareness is a great starting point because you can absolutely change how you treat people.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially like if we're thinking like in terms of allyship, right? And how, um, like maybe you just want to make sure, like, you don't know who in your group might be
Mhm.
queer. And what if they're like, I don't know if this is a safe space to come out. Like, what if they have a partner, but they don't want to like talk about their partner or whatnot, and like simple things like minding your pronouns and just making sure that we're not using microaggressions, like even on any
Mhm.
level, right? For so long, especially in American humor, like microaggressions have been used as a form of comedy. But like, maybe if it's like, oh, if I say those jokes, maybe it can turn someone off and make someone uncomfortable, just little things like that
Mhm.
to balance it out. And even though your work isn't like, hey, you gotta make sure your pronouns are good, or because sometimes people feel like they're pressured into doing some things. But if you're just like, hey, this comes natural and I'm gonna practice this and be
Mhm.
intentional about it, like it'll just become part of your daily practice.
Mhm. Well, there's something called, like, psychological safety,
Hmm.
and that's a vital part to any kind of, like, communication that you're having or team building that you're having, anything. But when it comes to this, like, what we're trying to do is create that safety for other people to feel included, right? And that starts with how we treat them. And I do think, if you say something because you're human, you can still create psychological safety by acknowledging, like, "Oh, you know what? I don't think that was the best way I could say that. I'm sorry." Right? Like,
Yeah.
acknowledging that maybe had a misstep or said something inappropriate because we are all human.
Hmm.
And some of this stuff is rooted in our system. And
Yes.
it can take some time to unlearn some of
Hmm.
those things and put it into practice of not saying those things. So I think it also is important to acknowledge that you are human, but part of doing that is owning up to some of those things that maybe you've done that could create some unsafety for people psychologically. But psychological safety is the first step. And you don't do that through a policy. You do
Hmm.
it through your actions, through your behaviors, through things that you're saying and doing.
Hmm.
And even if you have a policy about something, that doesn't mean people are gonna follow it, right? But if you are demonstrating, like, "This is something that I am committed to because I'm a human and I value other humans and their experiences," then you're gonna be creating psychological safety, which is a key ingredient to inclusivity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Honestly, I think it can have that ripple effect.
Uh-huh.
You start having these practices, people recognize those practices, people want to join in on those practices because they see that it does have a positive impact,
Mhm.
whatever that might look like. And I think people would start to, you can start to kind of change the tide and change the perception of how we want to be
Mhm.
treated in certain spaces. What comes to mind is like the hatred and all the like negative things that are said about queer folk are happening because people have felt empowered to say them because they're
Yeah.
saying that it's okay to say these things.
Yeah.
And it's become just kind of like part of our daily language, just like bringing microaggressions and hatred, like comedy, into our daily lives. But you can take an intentional step to take that away. And if people feel empowered to be, take those microaggressions out of their workplace and to, identify and empathize with people around them in the situations that they're going through, I think they'll kind of lean on you back, right?
Mhm.
What's the
Mhm.
golden rule? Treat people how you want to be treated. But, you can
Mhm.
empower others to also put that positive energy out. And I think
Yeah.
if we can, instead of being afraid, we should come back to normalizing that,
Absolutely.
and being able to do that.
Yeah, instead of essentially waiting for approval,
Hmm.
because like, imagine what it would look like if we all just stopped waiting for a policy to happen or a
Hmm.
policy to be reversed, and instead we just started treating people like people,
Mhm. Yeah.
and acknowledged that they were human. Oh my gosh, it would be so wonderful. But that's the key to, I think, also, so that's sort of the step 1 in all of this is self-awareness and acknowledging how you're treating people. And then that can lead into, I think, a big shift even in some of our mindsets, if we're not already in this mindset, is what a lot of people term as pro equity mindset.
Mhm.
And it's sort of a new framework that you as a person are shifting your mind into following. And it's not going to happen overnight,
No.
right? So it takes little steps.
It's like for our mental health folks, like how many times do we have to do self-care or those self-love affirmations before we even I mean, I'm still working on it. So it
Mhm,
is a
mhm,
daily, like, having to practice this. Yeah. So when we're thinking about a pro equity mindset, and equity is not about just being equal, it's about allowing the same opportunity. Right.
mhm,
And so instead of being more neutral or what is it, complicit sometimes in what might be happening, you can be intentional about making certain like acknowledging someone's safety or like acknowledging that if they want to talk about their partner, they're safe around you. I have literally gone to people and said, "Hey, look, if you want to talk about it, I'm cool with it. Like if
mhm,
that topic there, I'm cool with it. And sometimes just
mhm,
them saying that, yeah, it could be awkward. You're like, why would you tell a queer person? But honestly, from the other end, I've heard that that's okay. Like they want to hear that they
mhm,
know that they can trust you with certain like information about their true selves, and it'll make that relationship stronger. Look, we don't have to go into deep dives. If you don't want to like open up yourself, and we're not talking about telling our deepest, darkest secrets. It's just,
mhm,
hey, like, I respect your pronouns.
mhm,
Hey, like, I don't want you to feel like you can't talk about your wife around me or about your partner
mhm.
with me. Um, I'm cool. And then that's it. And then you drop it and then they take it how they want to go. But at least you open the door to like having that opening and just being intentional about that. Hey, I am an ally here with you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a safe space.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not inclusion doesn't just happen by accident. It
Hmm.
requires action, not just, like, being nice to somebody.
Yeah. It
Although, yes, it is important to be nice.
Be polite.
But then there's also and I think you touched on this a little bit, so the next sort of step in a pro-equity mindset is moving from comfort into courage, and
Hmm.
that's might be where, conversations might feel a little bit awkward, especially if it is something new to you or something that you've maybe never talked about with someone before. Sometimes discomfort, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that you're growing. So
Right.
discomfort can be a sign of growth, not necessarily that you're not being inclusive to that person. It's just acknowledging again, like, I'm human and I've never talked about this before with someone, but that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to engage in that conversation with you.
Right.
So again, it might feel a little awkward at first,
Hmm.
but yeah, discomfort is good in this case.
Yes, it is. It's that muscle, right? We have immediate reactions to things, right? Because they're just practice. They're learned. They're so strong and deep in us, right? And sometimes we don't think about like what a certain joke might sound like to somebody else. And so in my mind, I'm saying this just like because of the things going on with immigration and attacks on Latino people and things like
Mhm.
that, where like that has happened to queer people and it's happening to trans people, right? And there are a lot of jokes or like funny memes that could be funny or like that they try to make funny, but it's not funny, right? That's what
Yeah.
microaggression is. And so if you are one of those people, like we said, we're human and you have made those jokes before, it's okay to take a step back and be like, I don't think I should say these things anymore, like because of like these things have become more and more harmful,
Mhm.
right? We're trying to get rid of that negative,
Yeah.
and that can
I do
really.
I wanna acknowledge that it's not necessarily just microaggressions though. It could literally just be so there's an example that keeps popping in my head. So my spouse,
Mhm.
this year they're in kind of a new environment, right? So they're still getting to know a lot of people. And especially with everything going on, we've been a little bit more like quiet, I guess, like not as loud.
Mhm.
But if someone asks them, of course, they still talk about me or whatever, but they're mindful of pronouns. My wife has always been really intentional about using neutral pronouns
Mhm.
unless she knows for sure she's speaking with someone that she feels comfortable sharing that with. But
Mhm.
she was telling me recently she was talking to someone that she talked to previously and had used gender neutral pronouns. And so there was like this whole back and forth. and the other person kept referring to me as husband, but my wife just never corrected them
Mhm.
and just kept using the gender neutral pronouns.
Right.
And it wasn't a bad conversation. Like, they had a good conversation. They just kept gendering me as husband.
Right.
And then a little bit later, they were having another conversation. My spouse was talking to someone else that they feel a little bit more comfortable with, who knows that
Mhm.
my gender is female,
Mhm.
and this person was there. And so when it came up of when my wife said my wife, the original person was like, "Wait a minute. So you have a wife and a husband?" And when my wife was telling
Oh
me the
my
story, I was like,
gosh.
"Well, that's an interesting." But, um, but she goes, "No, I just have a wife. I don't have a husband." And she goes, "Well, you said you were married." And she goes, "Yeah, I am to my wife, to a woman." And she goes, "But you told me you had a husband." And she said, "No, you just assumed
Mhm.
because we talked about me being married." And I think that was an innocent conversation. I don't necessarily think it was a microaggression on the part of this other person.
Right.
Although, yes, some people might say, "Oh, no, it's microaggression." But if she didn't know that my wife was gay, she made an innocent assumption based on a binary,
Mhm.
heteronormative mindset that she has, right? And when the conversation continued, my wife was like, "Yeah, it was a little weird," but she didn't feel I mean, she didn't seem, like, upset that she found out that I was gay.
Yeah.
You could tell that there was a moment, though, for her where she was kinda like, "Oh." And so I think it's important to say, like, some of these conversations, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're using microaggressions. It could just be that we're making assumptions about people that might be incorrect. And so are
Yeah.
we doing things to try to minimize
Right.
those assumptions?
Mm.
Until they tell us, right? Like, if they say, "Oh, yeah, my husband or my wife," like, now I know.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's important to acknowledge that it's not just whether or not we might be using microaggressions, it could just be making assumptions
Making assumptions. Yeah. Yeah, I'm
about
glad you
other
brought that
people.
up. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. Normative mindset. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Because yeah, binary,
Mm.
heteronormative. 'Cause that's what our society pushes, right? That's what the
Right.
dominant society pushes, is something that's more heteronormative and binary. And so anything outside of those, if it's someone who maybe hasn't been around that before and has engaged with someone outside of that, then yeah, it's gonna be a little awkward at first for them
Mhm. Yeah.
because they're human.
Because we're human. But okay, so and that kind of brings up, right? Is like we talk about equality versus equity. So yeah, like when we're talking about like creating that workspace, like how in your situation, right? Is like yes, we
Mhm.
have an equal playing ground where men, women, for genders can come to the workplace, but we're not making it equity pieces that we can all have the same opportunity. It's just that if we know that there are people out there who might be marginalized, whether it's a person of a different, black, brown, people of color, or in the queer community. Like, are we allowing the space to make sure that they are comfortable about talking maybe about
Mhm.
like black culture or about black queer culture? Like,
Mhm.
are we going to downplay if someone or like if they say spouse multiple times and then you say and assume husband or wife, that's like you said, it's that heteronormative binary, like
Mhm.
equal playing ground, but we're not making it an equitable space for discussion,
Mhm.
right? If we're just going to
Mhm.
shut down anything outside the norm, right?
No, absolutely, and I do think, that's the big I think both of those terms and we've touched on this before when we had our episode where we talked in depth about DEI, but I do think our society uses the term equality and equity interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not.
No.
Equality is where everyone is the same, right? We're treating everybody the same. And they, just like you said, they're all getting the same things. Whereas equity is ensuring that everyone is getting what they need.
Right.
And that might look different for everyone. It's just leveling the playing field. So it could even just mean, like, in simple In a simple example, right? It's super common in workspaces. I know, especially if you have your own like space, your own office, it's super common for people to have personal photos of like family, kids, all of that. Are we ensuring that the queer person in the office feels comfortable displaying a picture of them and their spouse or them and their partner? Or
Mm,
them and their chosen family that might be a queer group of friends? Or do they feel like, I don't feel like I can do that?
right,
But the person who's in the office next to them, or shares a cubby or a cubicle, has photos all over the place of their heteronormative relationship,
right.
where the equality mindset is, well, yeah, everybody is allowed to put their pictures up. They can put whatever pictures they want to decorate their office. Whereas equity is, are we creating an environment where the person who doesn't align with necessarily those, again, heteronormative binary types of mindsets, do they feel like it is okay for them to also display that? Even if you're saying, yeah, 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 you can.
Mhm.
Can they really?
Can they really?
That's how I think of it in like a real simple example.
That's a good
Hopefully it's a
example,
good
I think.
example.
It cleared me up, that's for sure. Because 'cause I'm like, I always talk about equity, but in terms of, like, how,
Mhm.
dispersing, like, public resources and stuff, but, like, from a
Mhm.
person-to-person perspective, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, like, are we actually creating an environment in which someone can freely
Mhm.
just display, something as simple as a photo,
Mhm.
talking about what they did on the weekend without
Yeah.
having the fear of accidentally slipping, whatever it might be that
Yeah.
is personal to them.
Yeah. And even if you have a policy that says, yeah, everyone can do that, that's equality. But
Mhm.
equity is creating the space for all people to feel like they can do what they need to do to talk about themselves.
Yeah. So now
Which then brings us to the last sort of big shift in all of this, which is moving from awareness into actual practice. So
beautiful.
it's not just us talking about it and telling people again, "Hey, yeah, I'm being inclusive. Hey, yeah, I'm doing all these things." But it's actually implementing those shifts, right? So knowing pronouns matter. So knowing pronouns versus you regularly asking and normalizing them, right? So it's
Mhm.
not just about me saying like, "Yeah, I acknowledge that pronouns are different," but it's me actually making a point to ask everyone their pronouns and normalize using them, even when I'm talking about myself, right? Like, I'm Maddie, I use she, her pronouns, even
Mhm.
if people don't ask me, right? I'm just normalizing that we all have pronouns.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, that ties in again to everything we've been saying, which is just knowing that queer people exist
Yes. Yes, we do.
and using our actions as a way to tell other people that they exist.
Yeah. And y'all, and this is hard work, right? This can be scary, it can be difficult, and we're in a time where like we're all kind of trying to figure out like where our comfort
Mhm.
level is, where our safe spaces are.
Yeah.
But with lots of reflection over the year and a half, if we're not practicing it, if we're not aware, and if we're not taking that courage, then
Mm.
who's next to me that's going to be able to feel courageous to do the same thing, to do the same
Mhm.
work, and it could be just a one moment thing that can help people feel more courage to take that extra step to
Mhm.
feel more empowered to just be themselves or to be an ally to people.
Mhm.
We want to make sure that our workplace protections stay in place. And
Mhm.
we've got to make it that these things do matter and make it a
Mhm.
priority. I think that,
Mhm.
coming up in this next year, I'm really looking forward to really seeing like what we can do on this show and like bring more ideas to the table to like help, our listeners, new listeners. Maybe if you're coming in and you're an ally and you've never, like really approached this topic before, and
Mhm.
just feel like be more and more comfortable. Maddie and I have been
Mhm.
talking about this for a year and a half, and I'm not gonna lie, when I first started talking about this, like I was nervous. I was like, want to make sure I'm sounding good, but I also want to make sure that like I was nervous, like, okay, which part of my family's gonna reach out to me? What part of my friends am I gonna have to start deleting? Like all these different things. And thankfully
Mhm.
we've had a really inclusive and open community ready to listen to us. And thankfully, not a
Mhm.
lot of hate has come through. But, it's taken a lot of courage and a lot of practice for us to build
Mhm.
this. And I think that, like, yeah, we're saying this like we're making it sound easy, but, we know that it's not easy. And so just going this at your own
Mhm.
pace and figuring out how you can do it, and you'll start to re-implement those DEI practices back into our
Yeah.
lives, back into groups,
Yeah.
and start normalizing those things.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said all of that because, this week is for people who do celebrate holidays or Americanized holidays, Western holidays. This is the week of Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people reminisce about things that they are grateful for, thankful for. And I am thankful that, we took a giant leap of faith in our queer community and allies in our community to basically embrace what we chose to talk about for this show because we felt passionate enough to do this. But yeah, I'm like you, like I was nervous because like, yes, I'm queer and I'm in this community, but like I am not an expert in this.
Hmm.
All I can do is share my experience, my knowledge, my tips, invite other people on to share their knowledge, their tips, and hope that it can just continue to build up our community with positivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Megan and I are committed to keep doing it.
Yes, I'm so excited for second season. And you guys think we're gonna disappear after season 1? You're wild.
No, we'll still be chatting about stuff,
Yes.
talking about stuff. But I'm grateful that we're still doing what we can to encourage people to hopefully at least encourage people to build inclusivity into the work that they're doing, whether it's at the individual level, if you are a leader and you have taken some of what we talked about into practice, we would love to hear from you
Yeah,
and have you on the show
we would
in season 2.
love it.
But I wanna continue just to encourage everyone, like we said earlier, like, this is not gonna happen overnight,
Mhm.
and, especially right now in these really divided types of situations, you do what you feel comfortable doing to be an ally. Even if you are part of the queer community, you can still be an ally to other queer people, but you do what you feel comfortable doing. And obviously, we don't want anybody to get fired in the name of not a lonely coffee break.
Yeah. Use at your own discretion.
But we definitely want everyone to feel empowered to be hopefully that catalyst for change within your organizations by asking some of those tough questions and being willing to sit at the table to engage in those conversations that might be a little
Mhm.
hard for some people because we need it. We need it right now.
Wow. Well, it's been a pleasure and a lot of fun. I hope all of you have lots of safe, warm holiday festivities. But I think I'm about out of coffee.
Yes, me too. It was such a great chat though today. I'm
I
glad
loved it.
that we chose to circle back to this because that is a big why of what prompted us
Mhm.
to start the show in the first place was just changing our workplaces. But yes, out of coffee is our cue to wrap up. So thank you all for joining us. And before we wrap up, I have to give a little special shout out to my beautiful and gorgeous wife
Mm.
because this week is also our wedding anniversary.
Wow.
So happy anniversary, my love. And of course, thank you for being a listener of our show and encouraging Megan and I in this work. You are a vital part of these conversations. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure that you subscribe if you have not already, and also go ahead and share it with your friends.
Yeah, and then be sure to stay connected with us throughout the holidays on your socials. Let's continue
Mhm.
that conversation. We love to hear your questions. We want to, if you want to share your story or maybe share it anonymously, go ahead and send it out. Your experience, we want to hear about your experience in the workplace.
Absolutely. And of course, we love social media. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, and Patreon. And then, of course, you can check out the show on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. We hope that, of course, you'll continue listening to us for Not a Lonely Coffee Break. And again, we are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Megan.
Cheers, queer.